FYI, they do make iPad stands now where you wear like a pen and it will follow you around the classroom. Right? So if you end up in a situation where you do need to record your lectures in the future, they ran out for me, unfortunately. But if you have to record a lecture or student teaching, that technology is available.
You would never lose that pen.
No.
Because
that thing will just follow you. Yeah.
You could never lose it.
You could never. You can imagine the FaceTimes you could have. They could be epic. You could be like washing dishes, wearing your pen. It'd be amazing.
I was gonna say, what if you get the pen off?
Or what if you forget the pen? And then things are following you. Yeah. Welcome to the methodology continuum. This is me just wrapping up chapter 2, and this is the final application of what we've learned. So we're going to talk about traditional responsive and culturally responsive lesson planning, and then what we do in class today is going to directly be used for your discussion boards. So we're not wasting time here. So everything you do today in class, you can then just use on your discussion board assignment for this week. This week we have 2 discussion boards, and then your reflection from the interview on Wednesday will be due next week, along with just 1 additional discussion board. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the 3 broad categories of instructional methodology, which is traditional. That's what I'm doing now. It's when the teacher comes up there, and it's centered around me, and you just sit there and listen, which is okay. Sometimes you have to do that, right? Sometimes you need to do this because you just need to show your students something, show them a math equation, show them a biological concept. You need to explain something that happened in history or show them something about literature. And so you need to have that moment. And then there's responsive. I see responsive a lot, particularly in the elementary and middle schools. Where do you see traditional mostly? High school, which makes it really interesting. And then where else? College, right? That's the best. And then we have the responsive. Responsive we see more in elementary and middle school. I was just down at Montague Elementary watching a lesson plan. It was a great one. And it was more student-centered, but it was lower reliance on the two-way interaction. So it was the teacher making the students say or do something modeled after the teacher. So I do it, then you do it. I say it, or I ask you a question, and then you say back the key term. That would be more of the responsive. And then cultural would be responsive with the addition of elements like language, music, movement, and or social interactions of the students within your classroom. Now here's the thing. In real life, can you do an entire lesson plan every single day, all your lesson plans every single day, culturally? No, because what do we still have? We still have standardized tests. And there's definitely ways that there are things that we are going to have to teach our students in a certain way. Can you do a whole responsive one? You could, but it'd be kind of boring after a while. And again, there are going to be things that you have to use traditional for, right? That's just how it is in some of our areas of expertise. So the continuum is all about using all 3 continuously through your lesson plan. If I were to talk to you your faces off for 45 minutes every single time we met, this class would get really boring really fast. And if I treated you like 6-year-olds and I was like, okay, let's all say culturally responsive together, again, you guys would get really bored. So the whole point of the continuum is using all 3 throughout your lesson plan. So maybe you start out traditional, get into responsive, and then culturally relevant, or you could do the backwards way. Whatever you want to do, but the key here is to mix it up. And that makes it interesting for your students too. So they're not just sitting there and going, oh my gosh, is she going to make me repeat that word again? Or why are they talking my face off? And you also have to understand that you have to consider your classroom management too. If you had culturally responsive constantly, but you didn't have ways to get your students back in line, it'd get really difficult. So how is this continuum culturally responsive? Yes, ma'am.
It recognizes that students learn in different ways.
Yes, students do learn in different ways. How else? How does social interaction make a lesson plan more culturally inclusive?
You have more opinions of the students, like doing the real life connection part of your lesson plan.
Yeah, so your students have to, and what else? How do students interact with each other?
Casual.
Yeah, casually. They're going to use their language, their terminology to describe that concept. Also, if you're a really good teacher, you're hopefully not going to let students only pair up with their friends all the time. So they're going to be forced to interact with other people, which is really going to be nice because it's going to force your students to have to interact with people of various socioeconomic, ethnicities, race in your classroom. So that's how it makes it more responsive. But here's the key. You don't just do it to do it. So you'll notice I spent a lot of time thinking about the activities we're going to do in this class and how we do them, because I don't want you to leave class thinking that was just busy work. You need to have intention and purpose. Some of you have been in classes where you're like, oh my gosh, we just keep doing things sometimes. And you may think those discussion boards are busy work. I understand. But the curriculum does not come in a box. You need to use strategies intentionally. Why did you have your students move around the classroom? What was the point of that? Or what are you using for response from the class? Are you using key vocabulary terms as a response from the class? The right answer? What is it that you're using as a response? You don't want your students just constantly repeating you, and you need to be very intentional. Something I observed in the elementary school last week was this teacher kept trying to get her students to answer questions responsively, but she wasn't very clear and direct in the types of answers she wanted. And this was a first grade class. So it almost, like, it wasn't, she didn't have intention and purpose behind it. In some ways she did. They were learning a key term in science, so she would make them repeat that term every time they described it. She would describe it and say, so what is that? And they would say the term. But then other times, she would ask a very open-ended question, expecting a very specific answer, and then we got into the gobbledygook because you could see these first graders' brains turning, like, what is it that she wants to hear from us? And she would get like 4 or 5 different answers. So you really need to think about the intention and purpose and what is the point of why you're making your students do these things. And then it's quantity versus quality. So think about this. How many of us have sat through a lecture, traditional, for an hour and a half, bored to tears? All of us, right? Like, how many biology lectures have I been through that I'm like, I hate biology right now and I'm a biologist. So you really need to think about this, but also if you have your students constantly moving around the classroom and not actually engaging with the topic or concept, that's not going to help you out either. So you really need to think about the balance of both. And this is going to come with a lot of experience. Some days you're going to be like, that was insane. I don't think my students picked up anything we did because you were so focused on the quantities of activities versus the quality. And that just comes with time. Okay, so the 2 most important questions for you to ask yourself when you're trying to do this continuum is what specific activities are to be infused into the general lesson? So what is it that you want your students to do and why? And then what makes that lesson culturally and linguistically responsive? So this speaks to the purpose. So why are you getting them up to work together? How is that going to add to the lesson? And how are they going to learn from that interaction? So we're going to practice this today. This is going to go directly into your discussion boards. So you're not wasting your time. And while you guys are practicing this too, I'm going to come around and chat with you. I have 4 different lesson plans. Okay, I picked agricultural education because it's the one thing no one here teaches. And I know you're thinking, what a freaking waste. But agriculture is really important because you can do math lessons with it, science lessons with it, social studies, and English lessons with it because it's kind of all encompassing. And these are vetted lesson plans, so I'm giving you high quality lesson plans, not poo-poo lesson plans that no one's done. So what I'd like you guys to do is you need to find a partner who is majoring in something else. Find a partner who's majoring in something else. And then you're going to grab a lesson plan. So you need to find a non-friend, basically. Look at us making a culturally responsive lesson plan here. And what I want you guys to do is read over the lesson plans, and you are going to come up with a few activities that would make this lesson plan culturally responsive or more culturally based if it is already pretty responsive. So this is a well laid out lesson plan, already done up for you. And what I'd like you guys to do is consider how you would implement it in your classroom to make it more culturally responsive based on the continuum. So discuss what parts would you lecture on, where would you have your students pair up, what would you have them do, And then consider why you would have students do what you recommend during this lesson plan. So think about the purpose and intention of that. And then finally, we will go over this at the very end, but think about some of these tips for later. All right, am I online, folks? I'm going to send you a separate video in a little bit.